The iconic road trip. Join us today as we take a road trip throughout the state of Idaho as we go to some of the most haunted places in our state. You're listening to Speaking of Spirits. Grab your friends, grab your snacks, and kick back and join us as we travel the state of Idaho going to paranormal locations. Welcome. We're glad you joined us for this podcast. My name is Mark, and we're going to be talking today about different locations. We are located in the state of Idaho, which is in the United States. I know that does surprise some people. Being the state most people forget about immediately after the high school geography exam. To give you an idea, Idaho is sometimes considered the Pacific Northwest, sometimes we're considered Big Sky Country. We are if you are looking at a map of the United States, we are in the upper left-hand corner. The two top states, well, not counting Alaska, in the continental United States are Washington and Oregon, and we are one step east of them. So between Washington, Oregon, and Montana, Wyoming, a lot of wide open spaces. One of the states where we have more cows than people. But we've also got some very interesting things in our state, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. And also, while we're doing this, feel free to, wherever you're listening from, look around your area. There's probably some stuff going on in your location that you can get out, go see some things, go discover things you haven't seen before, and we encourage everybody to do that. So we are here. Like I said, my name is Mark. We got a bunch of us here tonight. Everybody has chosen a couple of locations, or at least one location we're going to go over, talk a little bit about, and get started. So I'm going to go around and let everybody introduce themselves and maybe talk about what their locations are today. As I mentioned, my name is Mark. I've got two of them. I've got a place over in a little small town in southwestern Idaho called Murphy I'm going to be talking about, and I'm going to be talking about a public park right here in Pocatello.
My name's Tim England. I like barbecue and hunting ghosts. I'm going to talk about the Lava Hot Springs Inn and Massacre Rocks.
I'm Andy. I'm the same with ghost hunting and hunting and fishing, mainly fishing, and watching football. I'm going to talk about caves and haunted caves in Idaho that I know of, and I'm also going to talk about the old Idaho State Pen right outside of Boise, Idaho.
And I'm Colleen O'Hara, and I'm going to talk about the Stricker Ranch, which is south of Hanson, Idaho, and Portneuf Valley Brewery, right here in Pocatello.
I'm Carrie. I'm going to be talking about Fraser Hall up at Idaho State University.
Cool. That'll be fun. I actually was a communications major at ISU, so I spent a lot of time in Fraser Hall.
I lived in Fraser Hall. I think. Owen Hall. I live in Owen Hall.
We've got a lot of fun spots. So
spent some time in Fraser Hall.
Yeah, I was a communications major, and that's also where the theater department used to be.
Yes.
And I did some tech theater classes while I was there too. So
yeah, spent some time.
that was, as they say, back in the day. Though we're not going to go how far back. That's another story. All right, you know what? I'll get us started. The first place I'm going to talk about is a little town called Murphy, Idaho. It's about 50 miles southwest of Boise. It's on basically pretty much the other side of the state from where we are right now. This is called the Owyhee Mountain Dwarfs. And there is a mountain range over there, Owyhee Mountain Range. And Murphy, I guess, is the one that is the city closest to it. I could call it a city, but its population is 63. It's an Idaho town. The population is 63. Not 63,000, just 63. That's the whole thing.
We commonly joke as you blink, you'll miss it.
Yeah, it's kind of... So it's a small town in the Owyhee Mountains. It is the county seat for Owyhee County over there. So, but rumor has it, the legend is that there are some cannibalistic dwarves that are said to live in the caves of the Owyhee Mountain Range over there. Yeah. They said they are about 2 feet tall. Huh. They are very, very strong and vicious. And the story is that they will kidnap children and eat them.
Very
So
interesting.
the legend says they also have tails, which they hide by wrapping around themselves. But they live throughout the caves, throughout the entire range of the Owyhee Mountain Range.
Sounds like coyotes to me.
The dingo ate your baby.
So again, this comes down to, is this a real, is this a real entity that exists, or was this a story that was told years and years ago to keep people in the village?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Kind of thing to...
Right, keep your kids close to
Yeah,
home.
keep your kids close to... And keep your kids, on the straight and narrow, too.
Right,
kind of
right.
kind of the opposite of Santa Claus here. You keep them in line, or the dwarves will get them.
That's interesting. The Owyhee Mountains are absolutely beautiful. They're breathtaking to go back there. And there are some mines back there. And,
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Okay.
quite a few mines, because I've been back there in some of my work. And it's really pretty back there. So I can see wanting to keep your kids out of the old mines that are back there. They mine for gemstones out there and gold. So there's a lot of different stuff they've mined out there.
What kind of mining do they do? So they probably have like a lot of chemicals and stuff still.
Well, yeah, some of the larger mines, I would assume there are some cleanups that we had to do out that direction because of the chemicals. But there are a lot of underground workings, small mines. The adits. There's some of the adits. You're always finding new adits out there, so it's pretty interesting.
Like with any tall tale, usually there's a shred of truth.
There could be an element of truth in there somewhere too.
Something attacked some kids and stuff, maybe coyotes and stuff, and
Right.
somebody saw a flash and thought it was something else.
I don't know where the Owyhees where it butts into Oregon. Is that forested down there? The Owyhees aren't too forested.
No, they're not. They look like they're fairly desert.
Yeah,
Kinda
because
like we
I
have
was
around here
wondering
in high
if there
desert.
were like wolves out in that area, but I wouldn't think so. There's probably not enough cover for them
It's
down there.
pretty barren for the most part.
You can get into the canyons and there's some forested areas, but
No, it was interesting because it implied that there's multiple caves throughout the mountain range there.
yeah. Well, they did mine. They mined a lot, so yeah. Yeah, it sounds like
So there could
something
be
that
something
your parents
in the
said
caves.
did.
That,
Well, it could have been anything, right? A cougar or something like
Yeah.
that could have taken a kid at one time, and
Or a bear.
yeah,
so.
cougar or bear. Or,
Bear with mange. It looks like a creepy human.
I'll throw in tiger just for fun.
Like, there's a lie.
when you talk about caves around here, though, again, high desert, the first thing I'm more worried about is the rattlesnakes.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, yeah.
My biggest fear is ticks, to tell you the truth. So I decided to do Massacre Rocks because I was a truck driver for a really, really, really long time. And I drove through it 4 nights. Well, actually, I guess 8 times total a week. Wow. So it's a beautiful area. And there's actually a whole lot of history with it. They call it Massacre Rocks because that is part of the Oregon Trail. And so there is no confirmed massacre there between pioneers and Indians. But you can tell because that there's cliff rocks on each side, why it would be nerve-wracking and why it would get the name Massacre Rocks. So there's that aspect of it. We all know that the Oregon Trail wasn't exactly a happy time. But so there's definitely those deaths there. But I also ran into an Indian story. The name just left me what they call that. I was gonna shoot out some knowledge there. That's what I get.
That.
Yeah. But basically, it's a story of water babies.
Yeah.
So there was a famine, and so a lot of the council got together and they decided that the moms needed to drown the babies in the water to prevent suffering, and so they could spread out their food. And so they did that, and the legend is that some of the babies got gills and fins and swam away, and they tried to draw their moms into the water. So you can hear babies crying. Mm-hmm. So that's about the only legend that I could find for Massacre Rocks. I can tell you one time when I wasn't driving a truck, I was driving through, and I could have sworn that I saw someone up on a mountain, and it could have been someone. But of course, your mind goes wherever it wants to, and I could have sworn that it was an Indian. And then I looked at the road and looked back up, and it was gone.
Interesting.
And so that's always been my kind of experience with Massacre Rocks, that it's beautiful.
It is.
And mysterious.
Yeah. For those unfamiliar, the Snake River runs right through that gorge, and it's beautiful there. Yeah. It widens out, and it's kind of, it seems gentle through that stretch, and yeah.
Yeah, it's a whole different part of Idaho. That's kind of where the Twin Falls Canyon starts. Mm-hmm. So you get a little bit of everything there.
I believe the historical sign there on the side of the road does say about a massacre that happened there. Actually, will say it.
Oh, yeah?
Oh. So,
but it wasn't there was like 4 people or something from what I remember. I mean, it was, there was a few deaths in there. But.
Well, I spent tens and tens of minutes on the internet, and I could not confirm or deny.
That's awesome.
When you were driving, though, did you find any strange weather patterns at Massacre Rocks?
Yeah.
Because when I was driving...
The worst weather.
Yeah. I used to drive between here and Twin Falls every day and back. And it goes right through Massacre Rocks. And it would be sunshine, blue sky, and then snowing sideways when you get to Massacre Rocks. And then the rest of the trip is beautiful.
Yeah, it was right from Massacre Rocks to the junction.
Yes.
And, there was more than once we coined the term driving by braille. So the rumble strips on the side of the road, you find that so you know you're still on the road.
That's scary, isn't it?
And it's just strange. Right there through Massacre Rocks was just about always the worst weather.
Once you got through it, you could unpucker.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
A few places in Wyoming like that, too.
Yeah.
The state of Wyoming is like that, but that's
true.
That's pretty much the whole state of Wyoming.
Yep. So my second one that I thought was really, really cool was Lava Hot Springs Inn. There's been a lot of shows on the TV that people have done through the years. Mm-hmm. And my experience was before all of these shows. Again, I was a truck driver for a really long time. And my second truck driving job was delivering food. And this hotel had a cafeteria in the basement. And that's where they did the room service meals. And they also did, I think, breakfast and a lunch service. And so, me, being me, I was rolling my dolly down there with food. And I asked if I could drop it here. And I heard no. And I was like, all right, where do you want it? And I looked over.
No one there.
Nobody. And I was like, all right.
Again, where do you want it?
Yeah.
Wow.
So I got that figured out. But it's, it made an impact in my life. And I've always really liked the building. It's always kind of had a drawing feeling for me. And I think that's for lots of reasons. Like we were talking before, it seems like water has a lot to do with everything. Water is life. And they have the mineral pools there at the hot tub. There at the hot tub. Yeah, that's right where they have it. They're at the hotel. And they have different temperatures, and it's on the outside, and it's a beautiful, beautiful place. So before we were kind of deciding what we were doing, this was in my mind. I didn't know much about it. But I got looking into it, and there's a little bit of history. I am quoting from the Dead History. And the Lava Hot Springs Inn was built in 1924 and was a state-run sanatorium and hospital until sometime in the late 1930s, early 40s.
I had no idea.
Yeah. People would come to Lava Hot Springs Hospital not only for typical medical care and surgeries, but also to soak in the mineral-laden hot springs pools on the property. So it was a hospital for a long time and a sanatorium.
Well, that explains a lot of things.
Mm-hmm. And it did that for a long time, and then it became... So health spa is definitely the wrong term, but it was a place where sick people would go to try to get health in the pools after the hospital and sanatorium thing. And then in the late 50s, early 60s, they turned it into a hotel. And the hotel, again, each hotel has rumors and stories and all kinds of things. But in this one in particular, it says the most well-known ghost of the hotel is that of an older lady named Martha. She seems to stay mainly in room 13 and is seen by guests who are outside looking at the building. She is said to stand in front of the window and appears to be knitting or sewing. Those that have encountered her while staying in this room said they awoke to find her in the room wearing a hospital gown and usually ask them what they are doing there. So, no correlation whatsoever, but I would have sworn to you the lady that said no, or the whatever that said no, was a lady. And so I thought, well, by golly, at least it was a nice lady telling me not to put my package there.
That's interesting.
So if you're going through Idaho, Lava Hot Springs is really cool. There's a lot of history there. The Lava Hot Springs Inn is beautiful. You can soak up the pools. You can continue down the road. And Massacre Rocks is pretty awesome.
While you were talking about that, I did pull up some stuff on Massacre Rocks.
Oh, well, see,
My
you
whole
only
tens
did
of minutes
tens of
on
minutes.
Massacre Rocks. They do say that there were according to the diaries of the immigrants, because there's diaries in the, I've read them in the little kiosk building. Settlers in 5 wagons clashed with the Shoshone just east of the rocks. On August 9th and 10th of 1862, 10 immigrants died in the fight, which involved 4 wagon trains. The skirmishes took place east of the park and not at Devil's Gate, which is the other term for Massacre's Rock. So just a little bit to the east of it. Some confrontations may have actually occurred there at the rocks, but they remain unverified. So you know.
Well, there you go. Her tens and tens of minutes were
I
much
know.
better than mine.
The Clark Massacre of 1851 occurred just west of Massacre Rocks, closer to Raft River. So that whole stretch in there had a lot of
Killing grounds.
A lot of death in there. Well, it's a great place to ambush the wagon train, right? I mean, because it's a narrow gorge and
You can get high ground on them.
you can get high ground. You can hide everywhere. So it would have been perfect setup for that.
Well, I played enough Oregon Trail in elementary school to know that I wouldn't have made it.
You would have been the first one out, right?
Yeah.
You'd have noped your own way out of it. All right. Actually, my 2 topics actually kind of correlate with what's been said so far. Kind of interesting. We'll talk about the old state pen. It's right outside of Boise, Idaho. That stretch of land to the foothills where the old state pen is there's a warm spring underneath the ground, and it literally heats the houses along this road called Warm Spring Road, and that ends up at the state pen, which they use to heat the prison too. Old State Pen is Boise, Idaho, right outside of it, and it was erected in the 1800s, and I think 1960-ish when they closed down. and built a new prison out there. There's also a women's prison, and it's just a little stone building right outside of the men's prison, which is not much bigger and a really big house. There too, which is interesting. They kept the women and the men in the same area. You get guard shacks and the guard houses were the living quarters out there. That's supposed to be haunted too. I didn't really tour them very much. We'll start with the women's prison. Being a sensitive, you could tell things were going on there. And the women's prison, you go through it, and definitely there's a lot of female spirits there. And they didn't like men. It was kind of interesting. It's, because I also met people that was a little more on the medium side and can do that, and just didn't like men, didn't trust them. Probably about 3 or 4. Very interesting because I guess in those days they would let them sew and stuff like that. They wouldn't let them do much of anything, but they weren't allowed out very much because there really wasn't a ground. They didn't treat the women that well in prison, but mind you, it was tiny. There wasn't many women in jail back then, unlike today. The big prison area, you had your gallows, you had your barracks, and you had the isolation, and a few other buildings. Every one of them had activity. You had to fill them. You can go through those barracks. There are sections you're like, wow, I am definitely being watched. The execution chamber where they, the hanging, very, very, very strong. And that was kind of a sad feeling, type of deal. There was areas that were a lot of graffiti on the walls and stuff from the prisoners and stuff. Very kind of angry a little bit. Solitary confinement was amazingly crazy for crazy. But the big interesting thing there is I wasn't allowed to let my daughter anywhere on my site because there's men there that hated women. It was really, really interesting to go through that, and they do tours and everything. The Ghost Adventures show did an episode on it. Really didn't find too much evidence. And if we wanted to do it, it's $300 an hour. We can do it, but it'd be $300 an hour to pay
You pay the state of Idaho.
Yeah.
$300
Well, yeah,
an
because
hour.
you've got to pay the salary
Yeah.
of the person's. Or,
What if we promise to wear black?
Yeah, but they acknowledge it's haunted. They say it hasn't been too much found there, but obviously if they're going to charge that much type of deal, you're not going to get much found. You can go through the EV, probably catch some EVs and stuff like that. But it's a very interesting place, well worth going there, and it ties with the underwater thing because these houses would literally have a spring going out in the middle of their house and it'd be heating their house.
Yeah, well, Idaho is geothermic activity
Yeah.
across the whole state, so.
I'm sure they're crazy expensive houses too, but yeah, it's an interesting little section there of that town. I've heard that a lot of those houses had, hauntings in there. When I lived there, it was back then I wasn't that into or tapped in as much as I am now. But it's a very interesting thing. Definitely well worth the visit if you go there. Downtown Boise. It's well worth it to check it out because it's a piece of history. What it was like, and there's a few buildings that burnt down or whatever, and so you can't really go wander through the rubble and stuff. But it's really interesting there. The second one is the cave system, and there's 2 in Twin Falls is actually internet worthy. That say they're haunting. One's called a clay cave. That one's kind of open at both ends. You get wind and travel through. I'm more likely to think of you hearing all these funny noises and stuff probably because of the wind. I'm a little more skeptical in that one. Third cave is a personal one I visited myself. The other one is Shoshone Cave, ice cave. So it's literally an ice cave, 20 minutes north of Twin Falls, and it's a guided tour. They have lights all the way through it, so there's electricity there. And there have been stories of hearing voices, footsteps, and nobody's there, especially from the people that run the place. And you go about 3/4 mile in. And I've been doing it as a kid. And it's a beautiful thing. A little trail you walk in, there's stairs up and down. And it's really interesting because there's ice formations, ice crystals, and everything inside the cave. So they've got the water element on it, and the folklore on it is an Indian princess named Shoshone princess named, oh man, it's a popular name here for the tribe here. Yeah, one of the pretty popular name, Indian princess got trapped in the cave and stuck in the ice. And her spirit's still there trying to get out. That's the folklore on it. And, I am personally going to try to let them do an investigation there. I'm going to work on it. The same was a ghost town.
That would be awesome, though.
Mm-hmm.
I love ice caves.
The third one, cave, I personally went there. It's right outside of Craters of the Moon. So literally in the rangeland, but technically the Craters of the Moon area. There used to be another ice cave called Crystal Ice Caves, which they closed and sealed off the entrance, unfortunately. But there's another one called Lariat Cave that I've been to. This is a cave. It does a big circle, and I've always felt when I take my kids there, and anybody that's sensitive felt that you have been severely watched the whole way in. So I took my gear in there and we ghost hunted. And we had 3 teenage spirits that loved to show up and watch you guys go to the cave because they enjoyed it in their lifetime. And it's kind of like 3 girls getting together, gabbing and stuff like that. And we got those girls chatting. They were just telling us everything about themselves, and it was very interesting. But they also said there's a creepy guy that goes in there too. So there may be a bad spirit that goes around those caves.
Did they define creepy guy?
No,
creepy guy's a big window.
I know. They didn't. They thought he was evil, but that's. You never know, but yeah, I believe there's potentially spirits going out of all those caves. If they enjoyed it in life, why not visit in death? And why not watch some kid fall over and laugh at them or whatever, But there could be some amazing activity in them. And I'm sure there. Next time I go, they may not get anything. They may not show up. You never know. But it was definitely thing, and it definitely proved to me that I did feel something going in there all these times growing up and stuff, because that's one of my father's favorite places to go for caving.
Can I interject?
Sure.
So, have you ever been to Carlsbad Caverns?
Mm-hmm.
It's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
It's wonderful.
Where is that located?
New Mexico.
Carlsbad, New Mexico.
So I've been there a few times. The most recent was with my family. We were coming back from Disneyland, and we decided to stop and go see. Mm-hmm. And so we were down there, and it's a cool place. There's always a lot of people. But I was kind of by myself, and I started hearing something. And I was like, well, what's going on here? And there was a really dark corner in the caves, and it was coming from there. And I was like, what's happening? And so I started walking over that way and cautiously going over, and it got louder and louder, and I was like, I'm here! And I kept going, and I ran smack dab into this guy.
Yeah.
Apparently President Obama was going to be there the next day, and the special forces were there trying to set up positions.
Did they throw you down on the ground?
He was a big boy. I'm not small. And he had the earpiece, and I was like, sorry, sir.
Out you went, huh?
This is what we call a tactical retreat.
Yeah.
Run away.
You know the grand ballroom down at the bottom of Carlsbad? Mm-hmm. They found one that dwarfs it.
Oh, really?
Just off the grand ballroom, but the public isn't allowed in there.
Wow.
Yeah, they always have the, geologists, and they were, because the largest cave system in the United States is in either Kentucky or Tennessee, I forget. That's the largest cave system. Mm-hmm. Not anymore.
Yeah?
Because of this enormous ballroom they found. They were going back, and there were some smaller rooms off the grand ballroom that's not open to the public. Mm-hmm. And they found an opening finally after all these years, and it's like they said it's just incredible.
Geologists get to see all the cool stuff.
I know. It's not fair. It's
No
really
barriers
not
there.
fair. Okay. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the Stricker Ranch, and we've brought it up on our podcast before, but it's just such a cool place that I think if you are anywhere in South Idaho, you need to go. So it's just south, or about 5 miles south of Hanson, Idaho, and it's called the Stricker Home Site in Rock Creek Station. It was built in 1865, and it's on the National Register of Historic Places now. And it's managed by the Historical Society and the Friends of Stricker, Inc. The Strickers family had built this Rock Creek Station, which was like a stagecoach station. And were you on that investigation with us, Mark, or not?
Which one?
When we did the Halloween event out there for
No.
2 weekends. So we went out there. The Friends of Stricker asked us to come out and do an investigation in the summer so that we could get it all reviewed and a DVD ready for the Halloween. They do a Halloween presentation out there every year, and it goes for like 3 weekends or something. And there was so much activity out there. It was bananas. It was absolutely bananas. But so they have the main house, which was the Stricker family house. They also had another house, which was like a boarding house for people on the stagecoach can stay for a night or two. They had the livery stables. They have a cemetery. They had a grocery store. They had like everything out there. It was a really neat little setup. But I don't think I've been. I mean, the Enders Hotel is impressive. The Stricker Ranch threw us because it's kind of an unassuming. I mean, it's a beautiful house. It's an 1800 house. It's a clapboard house. But you don't go in there with the notion that all this stuff's going to like kick your butt that night. There was so much activity, you didn't even know where to go. First, we had disembodied voices. We had a lady who worked with the Friends of Stricker Ranch Society, which helps maintain the property, and they raise money to keep the maintenance going. We had disembodied voices. We had singing. It sounded like the dining room, which is really, really quite pretty. It sounded like somebody was tearing it apart. When we're reviewing the audio, nothing ever happened in there. I mean, it was just, we had stuff moved, orbs of light that came right at the camera and then took off. Just you name it, we had it. Shadows. It's a kind of a bananas place, and they do have tours all the time. You can go out there, and there's a little museum set up that you can go through, and then you can go through the house. And so any of the funds that they charge you to go through there is for maintenance, and it's so worth your money. Go there. You don't have to go like during Halloween. Just take your tape recorder with you and go through there and just see what you get. I'm telling you that most of you will probably get an EVP, if not a whole bunch of EVPs. It's that wild. So the other location I was going to talk to, we've talked also a little bit about it, is here in Pocatello, and that is the Portneuf Valley Brewing Company, or Portneuf Valley Brewery.
Excellent place. 4-star.
Yeah. Yeah. Food is really good. Haunts are even better. So I'm telling you that there's 3 stories, right? Because you have the basement, the main floor, the second floor. The basement, we got activity. Mm-hmm. We had the shadow detector going off. We had caught shadows and different stuff down there. Main floor, not too much going on there. Then we get up to the 3rd floor, and it rocked and rolled. We had the flashlight on numerous occasions. It caught on camera where it just took off across the table and rolled. We caught a great shadow in 2 camera angles, so we could tell it wasn't one of us. We had the incident in the bathroom, which was, so that young lady that was on the team at the time was a very gifted medium, 16-ish, I think. Probably.
She was about that, yeah.
And she went into the bathroom, I think to use the restroom.
Yeah, she actually went in to use hers.
And was physically attacked in the bathroom. And then it locked the door. So there's 2 doors to get in the bathroom. You go through one door, and then there's like a mirror, and then you go through another door to the toilet. Wouldn't let her out. Would not let her out. So she starts pounding on the door. She's like, I can't get out, I can't get out. And she's getting scratched all over her body and pinched and everything else. And Phil, who was on our team at the time, and he's a Marine from Afghanistan, he went through that. But we're like a bull. He's like going to get her out of there, you know. And he's like, you're going to fight with somebody, you're going to fight with me, you know. So, yeah, it was pretty impressive to watch him like pop to life on that one. So anyway, she got out of there. And Phil was in there. And if I'm not mistaken, that's when Phil was in there, when it started coming through us. Mm-hmm. When it came through us. We're all on the outside of the second door, on the first door. And then we have this reporter with us. And there was a table about the size we have our microphones on for this podcast. So it was about 2.5 by 2.5. Just a small table. And it was sitting by the door because we had some camera on it, facing not the bathroom, but another direction. And I'm watching the reporter because his hand was on the table, and I want to make sure he's not going to shove it because I noticed the table's moving a little. So I'm looking down at the table, and his hand's on it, but as soon as he feels the table move, he lifts his hand up, and then the table went, whoa, and it moved. And then this thing came out. And when it came out of the bathroom, the spirit, it went through all of us. And everybody was immediately sick. It was like we were just nauseous and headaches. And the reporter goes, I gotta go. And he left. He was like, out. He goes, I'm out. And everybody was kind of queasy and sick. And it took quite a while for that feeling to go away, because you could feel that thing coming right through you like a freight train. Mm-hmm. So when I had talked to Penny, who used to own it, after the investigation, she said, when she was converting that old building into the bar, she had contractors that were working on this and remodeling, and they would leave their tools and leave. And she'd call them, like, well, are you coming back? No, we're not going back. Well, what about you? I don't care. Just, they left. They left. And she goes, I don't know how many contractors we went through. They just wouldn't come back. And then they'd be down on the main floor, and they could hear what it sounded like oak barrels being rolled across the top floor. It used to be a brewery a long time ago. Mm-hmm. And then it became probably just a warehouse. And then she was putting it back into a brewery. And she goes, you could hear what it sounded like oak barrels rolling back and forth upstairs. She said it was really wild. Now, some people on the main floor have also seen, I don't know how to, so do you know like the old pictures of witches, and they had like the black and white ring socks, mm-hmm. or the red and white ring socks for like Halloween? A few people have said that they've gone in the bathroom on the main floor, and you kind of look under the stall door to see who's sitting next to you, they'll see those socks. I thought it was kind of cool. Anyway, I never did see that. But if you are in Pocatello, not only is their food excellent, but go in there and see what you feel.
And their beers are great too. Their dark beer is outstanding. I give it. But
yeah.
Yeah. So great food, great beer. Make some new friends.
Yeah.
If you're in town, check it out.
Check
it
out
out.
the beer. Okay, so up at Idaho State University, is it just the theatrical part of it, the building? It's called Fraser Hall. It was put up in 1970, and it wasn't very long after that people started saying that they were hearing the piano play by itself and different things, seeing things. They've had several investigators in there, and the main one, his name is Alex, the entity that is there. Or that's what mm-hmm. the different ones that have gone in there have said. The janitors, custodians or whatever, they normally go there in pairs.
Really?
Because there's normally when the fewer the people, the more the activity.
Interesting.
So they normally stay in pairs. But the piano plays by itself. That's probably one of the most things that has been reported the most is the piano playing by itself.
You know, it's not a really old building, so you got to wonder, is like an old music teacher or something.
It was 1970 was when it was.
Yeah, but then again, it's a theater. And theaters are very
They do draw.
attached, yeah.
Yeah.
People tend to put, and we've kind of mentioned this before, but people tend to put their whole heart and soul into something.
Mm-hmm.
Theater is one of those things, both live theater and particularly older movie theaters.
Mm-hmm.
Movie theaters that were around in the heyday of movies, the 30s, 40s. Projectionists will be around forever. They just, it's who they were, how they identified themselves. They loved it so much. So theaters just tend to attract people.
They say the New Art Theater up in Blackfoot has a lot of stuff too, and that's
we did the Orpheum Theater in Twin Falls several years ago.
Egyptian Theater in Boise.
I heard
Yeah.
about that one.
So
did you have any? You said that you had been in there
In Fraser Hall?
I got my degree in communication, so that's where I spent most of my time. That's where just
and
about
did
all my classes were.
you?
I never had
ever-
any, not that I can remember.
I didn't
But then
see
I don't remember most of college.
nothing there either. But once in a while you can feel some. But usually I wasn't there at night or by myself.
Right.
So-
Usually it's some band.
What's interesting in buildings like that, especially in universities, right, is they always have the tunnel system for the boilers to heat all the rooms, to heat the buildings. So the boilers, all the piping is in a tunnel system. And you got to wonder, easy corridor access for spirits to kind of just go nuts and go back and forth and bounce around from building to building, right? Not that they need a wall, a door to go through, but...
It's interesting, though, and I've never found out why, but they tend to stick to one area.
Yeah,
They'll be, in this case, they'll be in one building
yeah,
on a campus.
yeah.
And there's, to the best of my knowledge, there's nothing, for most of them anyway, there's nothing holding them there.
Yeah.
They just choose to stay right there.
If you spend 20 years at that place teaching,
Yeah, 20
Yeah,
years
I mean,
teaching.
it's-
or-
that's
The
The
what
Even if
last
you
place
were
I
a
want to be
student.
is where I worked.
Yeah.
But then
Exactly.
again,
Mhm.
you go to a factory, you can feel it.
I know, right?
Yeah.
So, but that's interesting.
Yeah, and Gravely Hall, I think it's a joint to it, also has had a lot of activity. And that one, the doors actually open and close at Gravely Hall,
Interesting.
which is also up at Idaho State University. So those two places, they've had lots of activity.
Administration buildings, the only one I really felt anything.
So where would it be from?
It's that old castle looking kind of one next to the sub.
It's actually, it's on the campus, but it's actually like 2 or 3 buildings away.
Okay.
Because you've got Fraser Hall, then you've got the business building I can't remember the name of, and then the other side of that
Is where.
is the
Yeah,
administration.
engineering, then the administration,
Yeah.
then the sub.
Okay. Might have to go up there.
So yeah, there's actually a couple buildings in between them.
They're all old and they're all,
Yeah, that center section of ISU is all older buildings for sure. Okay. All right, my second place, getting back to me. My second place I'm going to talk about right here in Pocatello is a place called Ammon Park. And this is a really interesting one. Ammon Park, it's a public park. It's on Ammon Road. It's just right off of I-15. I-15 is our major interstate that goes through town, runs north and south. Ammon Park, there have been multiple reports of a young girl in a blue and white dress there. And multiple reports of this young girl, usually on a swing set or around the swing set. However, the entity that's there is not a little girl. It appears as a little girl, but it is not. So that right there puts it automatically into the realm of not a friendly. I myself have not spent enough time up there to know exactly what it is to really investigate it. But I do know there's been multiple people, and people, as soon as they find out I'm, in a paranormal and demonologist, and they start talking to me about this stuff, many people have reported seeing the young girl, but the entity that is there is not a little girl. It is something very dark, very negative. And I almost think there could be a vortex right there at Ammon Park, too. And I don't say that lightly. Usually when somebody says there's a vortex, I just kind of roll my eyes and, yeah, whatever. That's one of those terms that I think is overused, misused. not correct. But so I just wanted to say that if I think there's something there, it's a strong possibility, because that's not a term that I throw out. So my second spot is Ammon Park, right here in Pocatello. It's a public park. Anybody can go to it. Just if you go there, have fun, but be safe. Know what you're doing, because what is up there is not a friendly.
It's interesting because I've been through to that park for a few events, and I never liked it.
So is it activity during the day, during the night, both?
Mostly during the night, I think of when it is, or most of our parks around here close at sunset. So I think most of the reports, if I remember right, are right about the transition time, right around twilight,
Okay.
as it starts to get dark.
Might have to go check it out.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I've lived here my whole life, and I don't think I've been to Ammon Park.
Yeah, it's an interesting park, and it's tucked up right against the freeway.
Yeah.
Yeah. I see the kids sled down it when it's snowy, because it's got that big steep hill on there. So.
Yeah, it's actually a fairly busy park. It's just it's not a place you go past unless you're going to there,
Right, you have to go
because it's
there.
kind of up on the other side of a residential area.
Yeah.
And the interstate is on the east side of the park, so there is no way of getting there from that side.
Yeah.
So do you have to go through a residential area to get there? So unless you're going specifically to that park,
Right.
you're probably not going to be in that part of town going around there. So, but
Or I'm not well traveled. One or the other.
Yeah.
But because it is right next to a residential area, it is a pretty busy park.
I
Yeah.
believe it.
You know, especially for like sledding and things like that. So.
I don't know where that's at. I had to look up where it was at.
Okay.
I know.
I'm never in that area.
Maybe we should have a picnic there one day. See what we can see.
I was going to say we might do our next podcast a live version.
Well, one
No,
of
we
the
won't. I'm just throwing that out. I take that.
just
back.
to throw this one out, this if you're living in Pocatello, you've heard of Cherry Springs, and Cherry Springs is a nature area that was set up years ago. All of the trees in there were planted by the conservation groups. Those trees they weren't there originally. So there was a little amphitheater that was built in there. It's all fallen apart now, but it's a beautiful walking trail system that's down through there. But it's also pretty spiritually active area. You have Mink Creek that runs right through it. And set aside the fact that it seems to be drug haven at this point. During the day, you go in there, there's these big groves of trees, and you get in there, and it's really, really shady. And it's interesting. I've gotten some orbs in there, just taking still photographs. They're not. You can tell what an insect is. I mean, you can tell when you're looking at a video of an insect. It's an insect. And if you slow it down frame by frame, you can see the wings. But you won't see that. There's some energy in there. And I would imagine that, if you go further down, you have the guard station where I used to live. That meadow, we have pictures on the walls of our office of all the teepees through that whole area. So,
Oh, wow.
yeah.
That would explain it, because Cherry Springs has got a lot of energy on both ends of the spectrum. Just about everything in between. It's got some places that have got really great energy. And in that area, maybe not Cherry Springs itself, but in that area, I've also had some very dark energy down
You
there
bet.
too. So it's got the entire range of just about everything.
I lived at the guard station for a few years, and there's a couple of turns that you just kind of hold your breath, because it was not good energy right there. But you came out of it really quickly. There was just like a couple of turns.
Makes you wonder how many bodies are hidden out there.
Well, and the energy is there. I think I've brought this up a couple times, but when you're going up Mink Creek Road and you turn to go up Scout Mountain, right there's the spring that comes out of the mountain. It's amazing the stuff you see there. It's crazy. And all boils down to that water stuff again.
Yeah.
Going back to the caves, I was raised out in Arco, which is about 18 miles from Craters of the Moon. And Craters of the Moon is called that. It was a very old volcano that went off, but because of the climate that we have here in Idaho, the lava forms have stayed pretty much identical to when the volcano exploded. It really hasn't changed that much. Hawaii has a lot of volcanic activity, but because of their climate, it almost immediately starts growing over in moving on and processing. But so Craters of the Moon has been kind of an interesting place. But there's so many tunnels, caves out there in that area. But now the other side though is that it is lava rock, and if you fall, lava rock will chew you up. It is horrible.
It's worse than road rash.
Yeah, it just scrapes
It's
you
just
up. It's
glass.
painful.
It's
It's
glass,
miserable.
so-
But it is also a great insulator. So the caves and everything out there in that area, the caves and tunnels out there, they can still have snow and ice in August. You know, just because it's such a great insulator.
You need a coat.
And the stories that we heard growing up out there is that was at one time a place people would go if they didn't want to be found. If they were running from the law, running from something, if they had been banished from the village, from the tribe, then they ended up out there. So I can see that area having a lot of energy, a lot of highly charged emotion.
Especially
Out
the
there
ones
that's
I told
frozen.
about that's out, just
Yeah.
outside of the boundaries.
So so there could be a lot of activity out there just because so much emotional energy was out there in that area. Yep. So people who did not want to be found.
Now I know where to go.
Yeah. And that was kind of the payoff. It was there wasn't even a lot of animals that would go.
Well, there isn't much for them
Yeah,
to
there's
survive
not
on.
a lot of food out there. There's not a
No.
lot of. Yeah.
I've been out there when it's been in bloom, Craters of the Moon blooms, and it's only a couple of weeks because there's so little water. It's beautiful, but the wildflowers are only a few inches tall because that's all the water that they can get into their root system, and then they're gone.
Yeah, so there's not even a lot of animals that'll go out there. So there's not a lot of hunters or fishermen out there. So yeah, if you're trying to hide, that would be a good.
Yeah.
Be a good choice.
No, that's okay.
Okay, so
Especially around those ice caverns
yes.
and water.
So, all right. Well, that was our podcast for today. We thank you for joining us. This is Speaking of Spirits, and this concludes our road trip through the state of Idaho. We're glad you were with us today. Again, we encourage everybody to get out into your area and check things out, see what you can find where you're from. And if you're ever in Idaho, swing by, check out some of these places that we were talking about today. So if you're prone to that, but thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time on Speaking of Spirits.
Ha 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 ha.